So I quite like the way in his snazzy suit Christian looks more like he's from the Cabinet Office than I do. My name is Michael Brunton-Spall. I'm a technical architect with the Government Digital Service, which means I actually work for the Queen. I work for the Cabinet Office itself. And I'm going to come and talk to you about how we use Python to improve the government, at least a little bit. Yeah. I liked this challenge. Like, the idea of joining the Cabinet Office to improve government felt quite easy because I really don't think you could make it any worse. A lot of government does IT very, very, very poorly. And so, who are we? In fact, that should be who are we rather than who am I. Those of you who've spoken to me throughout the conference will know that I was still writing these slides about half an hour ago, so somewhat disorganised. We are the Government Digital Service. We were set up as part of the Cabinet Office in order to make government IT less shit. And I can say that because that's what my minister directly quotes as saying. That is our mandate, our mission is to be less shit at IT. It was started in 2010. Race Online was an organisation asked to investigate what DirectGov was, what value it was bringing, and they said, stop it, basically. So Martha Lane Fox wrote this report saying, revolution, not evolution. What government does in technology and computing is so bad you can't just make it a little bit better, you're going to have to start from scratch. And she gave us 4 recommendations. I'm going to talk about what they've been doing before I got here and the bits I've been doing. So the first thing was build a centre of excellence in digital. Apparently that's me. That scares me somewhat. But there's a good 300 of us down in Cabinet Office. We're trying to hire the best and brightest, and apparently me, into government to do this stuff, to take not your typical people who you think of as working in government working in there, but to actually go out and start saying, well, what about the people who are currently, they'd much rather go to Google or they'd much rather go to other places. We had to reform the way that we pay staff is a really good example. So theoretically I can manage about 600 people because that's the only way you can pay somebody a sensible salary. So we did that. We built a centre of excellence, and then you have a whole bunch of very bored hackers, so you need to give them something to do. So they said, fix publishing. Government has 300 and something different agencies. Everyone had their own different content management system. One of those was a WordPress instance. It managed a good 1,000 articles or so, which took it 200 members of staff at a cost of about 5 or 6 million a year. That's one of the 300. So we went, that's silly, and we built Gov UK. And we built it from users first, saying, let's make your access to what government is publishing easy, clean, simple. Let's apply some concepts like, you know, the person reading it might actually want to find some information out, that kind of stuff. That's all really exciting. I could talk for hours about that, but it's not what I'm here to talk about, because the other thing they said was fix transactions. You ask government a lot of things. You want to go find out stuff. But actually, far more commonly, you want to tell government things. And most of the time when you tell government things, it's because life is not actually as much fun as you might expect. You might be caring for somebody who has a disability, and you need to claim money from government on a regular basis to help you care for that person. You might be out of a job and need to claim unemployment benefits. You may be, in many cases, you may have moved house, or you may want to take somebody to a county court because they owe you money and you can't get it back. Most of the time when you deal with government, you are in a relatively poor place, and government IT makes it an actively hostile experience to actually talk to your government and get any help that you want. So that is what we're here to do. And we said, we can't fix all of government. It's quite big. There's a ton of transactions. There's 660 that we identified. So we said, we're going to pick 25 example projects, projects that we can find from across government that are really interesting. And then that's quite a lot, so we allocate people to individual projects. So I work on 2 of them. I'm going to talk to you about one of the local ones, because government doesn't just happen in London. Government actually happens out and around the country. And so I came up here to Birmingham to a group called the Insolvency Service. And the Insolvency Service, the primary job is to manage companies that go insolvent. So if your company ceases trading, then it goes insolvent and you're out of a job. They have to wind up the company, and the government has to step in to make sure all the right things happen. And in a certain section of that, you are probably owed redundancy pay. In most cases, it'll have come as a bit of a shock, because the directors have been in meetings for a few weeks, and then suddenly they announce, by the way, don't come into work tomorrow because you don't have a job anymore. And you need money. And you need money quite urgently. Your company owes you redundancy pay, it owes you a whole bunch of various bits and pieces of money, but they're quite disorganised, and the reason they shut down is they don't have any money. It was kind of the point of insolvency. So in order to claim redundancy, the government steps in and pays out of national insurance. You pay into national insurance all the time. Part of that is paid out to people so that they can get on with the next month of their life, and then the government claims it back from the company when the company's wound up. And in order to get this money out of government, we have a form. It looks like this. This is a photo of the paper form. It is 16 pages of paper form. This system, you fill in this form and you give it to a special accountant called an insolvency practitioner. He will collect, or she will collect, all of the forms from all of the members of staff, so that might take a few weeks to collect all the forms together, send them all off to the government here in Birmingham, where they will cut the forms apart with a scalpel. They will scan them one at a time with a scanner, turning them over the whole time. They then send the scanned versions off to a third-party company who charges quite a lot of money to OCR the forms and turn them into XML and send them back to government with only a 20% error rate, so it's fine, it's fine. And then these XML things will be put into a claim system and they'll be looked at, and about 80% of those go through and you get your money straight away. 20% of those contain some form of error and they have to go around another round of filling stuff out. And then 4 weeks later or 6 weeks later, you'll get another form through the post that says, by the way, would you like to do it again for a different section of pot of money that you may also owe, but you need to tell us some information? A lot of people go, no, I do not want to do this again. This was not fun, and I'm not sure it was worth my time. And it turns out, filling in a form is something that, you know, there's a solution for this. And I wouldn't feel too bad about this system. Like, this is an old government system. This is a really old government system that was built in 2007 or so. This is not like an 80s mainframe solution. This is a fairly new solution. So we came in, my team came in, so me and a couple other people came in to meet this organisation. And it turns out, unusually in government, this organisation has a small team of developers. And I'm like, awesome, they've got a small team of developers. And I think it's best to say that they were an underused, underinvested in team. Half of the organisation didn't really know they existed. They thought that they fixed computers and connected Ethernet cables. They weren't aware they wrote software. As a development team, they have been going through a moving of all of their servers for a project, which meant that they were unable to commit code to their core repository for a bit because, you know, you've got to freeze it while you move the servers from one location to the other. When we arrived, that had been going on for about a year. So as developers, they were being so devalued that they weren't allowed to do the job that they want to do for a year. They had to work on all the other projects that weren't the core project, that weren't able to actually deliver value. It was a .NET shop, which made me nearly want to go away straight away, but I was nice and pleasant and everything. They're nodding at me, I wasn't. They didn't have consistent test or build systems. Some of them had done test-driven design or testing in the past, others hadn't. They didn't have anything like a continuous integration environment. No project was definitely fully tested, no code coverage. They didn't really have continuous build or deploy systems. Some of the systems were deployed by using Xcopy with the XE, other ones required a 4-week change control window and waiting on about 5 other different departments to push it through into the server. Nothing was consistent, and nothing was there to make these developers' lives better in any way, shape or form. So how can we help? So we're here from Cabinet Office, we're here to help. It's a phrase that strikes terror into the heart of almost everyone in government, because the Cabinet Office are known for being seagull managers, I think is the term. They fly in, they help, and they leave. So we come in, how can we help? And they start meeting me, and we sat in a room and they all asked me these questions about Agile and what GDS does, and I got the impression they wanted to be a bit hostile to me. Like they were like, who's this guy and why does he think he's better than us? And then they started asking questions and they realised that I was technical, I understood what I was talking about, I'd done this stuff in the past, and it was going to work. So we came in and we said, first of all, we should kind of think about the users. Like before we do anything else, we're not just putting a form online, we actually have to think about what these people want. And of course, nobody actually wants to claim redundancy. Just like the talk yesterday, nobody wants to use our system. They want to come through it as quickly as possible because all they want is to get paid. And so we started off, we helped them look at this. This is the interaction flow diagram that shows how the system works. This is filling in a form, and this is the computerized version. And the users, it's trying to minimize the number of interactions they have at the top and maximize the amount of stuff that we're doing on the user's behalf at the back end. We also have government and craziness, so it's all got to go to like 30 different databases and connect up with things and all kinds of stuff like that. Because we wanted to do all of this, we wanted to start afresh. So I came in and said, you've got to learn new ways of working. You've got to learn how to architect properly, like, you know, on a whiteboard with boxes and lines and stuff like that. This is the architecture of the system. And so we're teaching them new ways that they should be doing various bits and pieces. But of course, the critical question whenever you start a software project, especially if you're from the Cabinet Office and you can, you know, force them to do what you want and then go away and leave them later, is what language am I going to make them do it in? And of course, we considered changing languages, we considered staying with .NET, but if we want to take these people and teach them new skills, we want to teach them how to build software in a modern, agile manner that's scalable, that works, that's on a cloud, all that kind of stuff, actually staying with inside your current comfort zone makes that a bit harder. So as a consultant, I can come in and say, I recommend you change your language, because then you change everything. You can't just be like, oh, well, I'm still going to use my normal desktop with all of my normal tools, but just change, you know, we'll do C# as well, and we'll do it the way we always did, but we'll listen to you and pay some lip service to what you're saying. So we said, we're going to take you completely out of your comfort zone. And so we looked at a bunch of different languages, and also I've got a set of fairly sceptical senior managers from the CDO and the CTO, like all breathing down on me going, why are you changing anything? This is going to cost money. What are you doing to my staff? I don't want them to think. What's that about? So I've got to convince them that the choice I want to make is not just the hip language I want to use because I'm the long-haired hippie from London who's come up to tell them what to do. And it can't just be a fun language that people use because it's enjoyable and exciting. It's got to be productive and useful. And so I worked with, we convinced them to bring in ThoughtWorks, who's an agile consultancy, to come and help the team learn what to do and write the software. And I happened to know the technical architect from ThoughtWorks quite well before we came, so we went to the pub a few months before and we had a discussion, and we said we need to convince them that we're going to pick the right language. So we came up with a set of things that said, what language do we want for a team of people who've been so disenfranchised, who have got a massive learning curve ahead of them, and we're going to give them with a really hard job. So we said the language has got to be easy to learn. It's got to be easy to learn. We nearly threw out Ruby right there and then, but I was convinced to keep it in. That wasn't good enough to get rid of Ruby. It's got to have a very simple ecosystem. I used that to rule out a lot of the JVM things sometimes, like there's quite a lot of tools to learn and so forth. We wanted lots of pre-existing packages as well. You know, that's quite important, that we don't have to reinvent everything. It's got to be things we can pull stuff in from. Good support for tests. We want it to be a test-driven language. We're going to teach them agile and, you know, by the book, basically. I mean, some people are post-agile, but like this is, let's just do it by the book, do everything else. It's got to still perform and work in production. It can't just be a toy language, like, I didn't want to bash Node.js. I apologise to anybody from here Node.js here, but I don't want to run Node.js in production, and I run a lot of things in production, particularly. The senior managers were absolutely adamant that we were definitely going to deploy this onto some Windows servers that were managed by Atos. I was quite adamant we weren't, but the senior managers didn't know they were going to lose that argument at that point. So we had to convince them that we were going to use a cross-platform language so that, you know, we could deploy into this, you know, fancy Linuxy cloud malarkey that we keep talking about, or we could deploy to their lovely stable Windows servers, which they wanted us to deploy to. So whatever we build has to work in either place. And then in this meeting, and we've got all the managers and everywhere there, the technical architect said, oh yeah, it should probably be a language that comes batteries included. It was obvious from that Python was going to be the clear winner. That was the language that we were going to pick. It is possible that we were biased in advance. So it turns out Python is a language that is, you know, batteries included. So that was how it went out. But we actually stopped and looked at it and went, for teaching people how to program well, how to do this stuff in a language that is easy to learn, that people can use, this is the best language to use. It is a very, very easy language to pick up, especially if you've programmed before. It's really easy to transfer over. You don't get too much, you know, unicycle riding craziness that you get in Ruby. You don't get the Node.js npm package management hell. You don't get the JVM joy of debugging a garbage collector, which I did for about 2 years non-stop. I can know more about back of the JVM garbage collector than anybody else I know. It's quite depressing and very, very sad. Like, I would much rather know more about Python. So we took this team, and I think we made a massive difference in the development team, in how they work. And I was trying to find some examples of pictures of the team, and I ran across this picture, which I think is, for me, one of the best examples of what we did. So this is the agile working space. You can see we were trapped in a room so that we'd all get sick together. That's an agile thing, apparently. But we've got stickers up on the walls so that, you know, if one of the stickers falls off, we've forgotten how the software works. That was an honest concern at one point, was that, well, if the stickers fall off the wall, then you'll lose all your progress. And what will we do? We had to explain the stickers are, you know, represent our understanding. They aren't actually our understanding. It's hard work sometimes. So you can see what's going on. You can see we've got a coffee machine in the background in government. The concept of bringing in your own coffee machine. We have a little espresso pod machine. Bringing in a device from outside the building and plugging it into the power, that's quite unusual. We allowed them to leave the office on a regular basis to go buy coffee, that kind of thing. You know, building up a culture that helps them understand they are valued employees who are trying to do the right thing. And we did that. And in this case, what we've got here is this gentleman over here in the far left. He is our service manager. He is the business representative. He's the person who is responsible for redundancy pay. So if you ever get made insolvent, it's him you complain to. But he's the person making all the choices. The person next to him, who you can just about see his head, that's the deputy CEO of the insolvency service. Most of the time people don't see him because he doesn't come up to Birmingham. He stays in London. You wouldn't come up and visit the people who do the job. He's a very important board member who people don't often see. He's come to visit because this man here, who's a relatively important man, this is the Right Honourable Francis Maud, the Minister for the Cabinet Office, talking to Seema, who is our developer. Just one of our developers, not anybody special. We didn't prevent anybody, we didn't make sure that Francis Maud came up to speak to the Deputy CEO, who, clearly knows everything that's going on in the project, knows everything. He came and sat down, and Seema walked him through the software, explained what they had built, what they had done. And it was that kind of empowering of saying, our developers can talk to people at the highest levels. You can go talk to the Minister for the Cabinet Office and explain what you've done. And the Minister goes, that's cool. I really like that. It's really impressive. Possibly not. Something like that. I should not put words into the Minister's mouth. That is it. So we kind of did a poll about what was it that the team had learned over the last, we've been doing this for 9 and a bit months, maybe closer to 12 if you count some of the discovery and introduction workshops at the beginning. And we said, what is it that you've done over 12 months? Obviously we've got a service that goes live, fingers crossed, next week, although we did take most of the development team away and send them to a conference this weekend, so we might push it back a little bit. But what is it they've learned in the last year? And in that time, the developers have learned a new language. They've had to learn an entirely new language which none of them knew before. And they're now pretty good at the language. They're better than me, so that doesn't necessarily say much, but they're pretty good at the language. They've also had to learn agile development with a capital A, proper agile development, I'll have you know. But we've taught them, ThoughtWorks, TM, agile development, the full XP style thing, pair programming, test, the whole lot. Test-driven design and development, we've had them doing tests, unit tests, nose test, PyTest, all of that kind of stuff. Selenium, we're using Source Labs for mobile browser testing to check that it actually looks good and so forth. We've got them doing DevOps, proper DevOps, in terms of the developers are allowed to do operations and stuff. We started them with Puppet because I bought GovUK's Puppet scripts, and they spent 2 weeks and went, we've looked at these for 2 solid weeks, we still have no idea what on earth is going on. So we switched to Ansible, which everybody understands, it turns out. I'm trying not to say rude things about Puppet. I use Puppet quite regularly. I kind of wish I didn't. I like Ansible's a bit nicer, solves a different problem, kind of works. We won the battle, so we have Linux servers running Ubuntu. They had to learn what Linux servers were, most of them. We gave them Ubuntu laptops, so the first week was mostly people complaining, I can't work out how to use this, what on earth is going on. Lots and lots of fun with Vagrant, trying to make sure, was my VM up, or is it down? What is a VM? Explain this stuff to me. They learned all of that as well. Cloud computing, we got got them on. We managed to purchase a proper real cloud, one that you pay per hour. We were offered some of Atos's cloud. Atos's cloud is a very good cloud on the vision you don't mind waiting a week for your server to be spun up, and you're not allowed, administrator rights on the server, or to log into it or anything like that. But it's a cloud. This is a proper cloud. Like, this is actual EC2 compatible cloud, except that it's in a special government zone. But it's that kind of thing. We've got them doing continuous integration. So we've got a Jenkins build, which is lovely, but it runs all the tests on a regular basis. It runs smoke tests. It runs integration tests. It does that. We've got them actually doing the deployment, something which doesn't happen in government that often. This case they did, because some of the servers they had admin access to, but we have them doing the deployment continuously, repeatedly, multiple times per day. Something which, again, the agency had told us, but we deploy every 3 months. Why would you want to deploy more often than that? And so we deploy multiple times per day, and we do all of that within a secure government context. Like, we have a security set of principles. We've had people from Cheltenham who were very nice look over our architecture and point out things that we should do better and things that we were doing quite well. We've had to do some very interesting patterns to get data from our system into the back-end system that involve, going from a HTTP server into an FTP server via a cron job at one point, that kind of stuff. We've done all this in the face of all those challenges, building up a system that all kind of works, all in 12 months, which I think is not bad for a government team. But that's not it. Like, this is. I get to turn up. I get to make them look, teach them stuff. They get to make me look really good, which is quite nice. But they've got quite a lot of other stuff to do, because this is just one out of 600 services, and for them, this is just one out of about 20 or so services. So the team has to repeat this over and over again on other services. This time without me around, probably, without as much support from the cabinet office and so forth. We have to move towards the back-end services. Like, sometimes what GDS does has been described as tinsel. We do a very pretty front end because we care about users and we want them to be able to interact with systems. But actually, we're moving to back-end service, and we're changing things at the back end as well, and showing that you can do regular deployments of real servers at the back end, something which my HMRC colleagues deploy once every 6 months with a 12-month lead time, which means if I want to put a feature into production, I have to think about the feature I want in 2 years' time to code it now. And we're trying to teach them that you can do development a bit faster than that. Like, they're up to twice a week, which is quite good. And I just want to say, like, for you guys, this sort of stuff's really important, but they need you, because it's really hard in government to find people who have strong skills in technical areas and stuff like that, trying to apply for government jobs, because well, they're hidden. I couldn't even give you a URL for the jobs that the insolvency service have open, because they're hidden away on some weird site. But join government. It doesn't have to be GDS. Like, GDS is awesome, and you should come work with us. But if you don't want to come work in London and work with the crazy hippie GDS people, every government department in every place in the UK is hiring technical people, and they're being told, you need to get better at this, because if we don't, then the government you interact with over the next 20 years is going to become less and less relevant to the way that you do things with computers. And so they need your help to get involved with that. That was a very, very quick summary of everything that I've done. The team are talking tomorrow morning, because it got moved, I think at 9:30, on the actual technical details of the project they built. So if you're interested in the technical details, you can see that tomorrow. If you have any questions, I think I've still got a good 8 minutes or so. I'm actually going to pause and take a breath now for just a second.
Thank you for that. That's brilliant talk. Very, very interesting to hear. Thank you. Of all those many changes you talked about, which was the hardest to push through, do you think?
I'm looking at the team to see if they've got any idea. Which was the hardest? I mean, Puppet was the hardest thing to try and get working in any way, shape, or form. The hardest to actually get the organisation to accept was the development team owning the cloud servers and running on a real cloud. Like, I think it was just so different to anybody's risk model, was that the team would have any real understanding of where their code would be running. It was just so alien to them that I think most mostly we got it done because they didn't really think we'd be able to do it, and so they didn't really pay attention until we turned around and it was running, and they were a bit like, I think we were going to argue about that, but apparently you've got it up and running and it works. Funnily enough, that's actually what happened to Gov UK, is that Gov UK did the same thing. So they went and presented to a big boardroom full of various private secretaries and people, and there was a lot of people going, you can't get rid of direct gov, and you won't be able to do this, and they all put in their diaries to come back next year and object to our spending control to say that we wouldn't do it. And we came back next year and went, by the way, it's live. And they were just like, oh, really? How have you even bought it by now? And we explained that we didn't. Sorry, there were more questions. There's a microphone coming.
When you're working out how to do all this, do you look at other regimes like Brazil that use massive amounts of open source as a matter of policy, or are you baking it all from scratch?
We reuse where possible. We're not generally looking at other governmental organisations. So one of the challenges that we've had in government is trying to get people in government out of thinking that they are a special government snowflake. So one of the reasons IT is so bad in government is for the last 15 years they have been sold a lie by the suppliers that they can only buy a government class database, and it is literally the case. You have to go to Oracle and buy an Oracle government class instance, which costs 10 times as much and falls over twice as often. But it is a case like only an assured accredited database is acceptable. So we've been trying to push really hard that actually a lot of the problems government faces, there are some problems that we face that are specific to government, but most of the things that we do in government are actually very similar to what people do in commerce. And in fact, in many cases, we have examples where we meet with people and they say, you don't understand, we have 3 transactions a second, you would not understand how fast this goes. And we're like, yeah, and we had Blaine Cook, who helped found Twitter in the office that day, and we brought him in and he was like, yeah, well, when we were starting Twitter, and we had 10,000 requests a second coming through, and we were still running on 4 servers that we just cobbled together from here. And these people were just like, sorry, what was that number at the beginning? What? So yeah, a lot of people have been sold a lie for a long time. Government is the thing to look at. We try not to look at government. We are seeing lots of other government people repeat what we do, so we open source a lot of stuff. If you look on github.com/insolvency service, I think you'll find the code, some of the code that we've been putting together. Obviously GDS open sources tons of stuff, DVLA, HMRC, Department for Work and Pensions, they're all open sourcing the work they're doing to try and make it easy for people to either see what they've done, which is more important, other government departments to copy what they did, and people to just feel like you have some transparency. Where the hell is your money going? Why are you paying for me? Because you should be able to see what value I give, and open source is a great way of doing that. Sorry, that was not an answer to the question you asked, but I wanted to make the point.
Hello, I'm from the United States. Can you come over and talk to some people in our government about how to do this sometime?
We've already done that. So the United States has just started up, I keep getting the name wrong, 18F, I think, is one of the groups, and then Obama's just appointed a CTO of government in the US who announced something called the US Government's Playbook, which is 14 simple rules for how to build new class digital services in the US government, and it looks very, very similar to the 10 design principles that Gov UK had and GDS had, because we were heavily involved in trying to say, you should do it this way. Try starting with thinking of the users rather than the supplier, that kind of stuff. Any more questions?
I would like to wholeheartedly agree with 98, actually 110% of what you said. I've recently been working with the Met Police, and the biggest problem they have is, like you said, their accredited database is controlled by people like Unisys and all those people, and the interactions with those are very hard. And the problem is, the people who are being sold the lie don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And it takes people like you and me to go in and say, why are you doing this? My problem was more Unisys and Capgemini people than me. And they don't like being shown up. Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we do need it, and you've actually blown half of my lightning talk as well. So, sorry, but I will still do it anyway. Thank you.
Thanks. We do have the advantage of having quite a big stick, which is not a nice way to refer to Francis Moore, but we have a mandate that says we can do this, we can go and bully the departments into doing it this way. They don't always appreciate it, but like it's a good thing that we can do it, which means we can use people more effectively now. So come help out, come join government, local government, central government, doesn't matter, just help.